Okay, so the main mixer has inputs for whatever vocals. You just have your mics go into the first 3 or 4. And generally you're going to turn up the higher mids a little bit. If you turn up the treble too much, it makes it nice and clear, but it also generally feed back a little more. And then you can adjust the bass the way you need. Then we have an input for when we're practicing here. This is for the drum machine, which is in the Zoom G10N, and we also use the Zoom G10N for acoustic guitar. So the cable coming out of the Zoom is going up into here. And that, you know what, I usually keep that flat. I guess we've got it.
Is that like
kind of
channel
pegged
1 on there?
That's just this channel. It's like the channel
okay.
5, 6.
Okay.
So you can actually plug stereo things in here, but I only ever plug one.
Right.
Okay, then the next 2 are guitar inputs.
Okay.
So those are coming out of this processor and that processor. So that cable that you see coming out. And in these little bosses, there's something really important about these. If you're using the bosses, you need to use the record out, because that includes speaker and mic simulation. Because we're not using a guitar amp, you just need to take it out of here. If you put it right out of the mono, it won't sound like it's actually going through guitar amp. It sounds bad. On the ME80s, there's a really funky kind of hidden thing, and it makes a world of difference. This actually makes an enormous difference. On the ME80s, you plug your guitar into the left and right outputs, mono if you just have one.
Right.
And you need to plug in a headphone, some sort of 1/8 inch connection. It can just be a dummy cable. You can cut off the cable from a cheap dollar headphone set and plug it in there. That turns on the speaker emulation. So there's not that on here. You just plug it into a totally separate output. On the ME80, you plug it into the regular monos. Okay, so I have a tube screamer going into the ME70, and then there's a cable coming in here from the mixer.
Okay.
And then there's another setup just like that over here, another tube screamer and a cable. Now when we're playing here, I plug directly in, but otherwise we take a cable out and plug it into the tube screamer. So what's going on with that mixer is we take all of the guitars and plug them each in here. So I'm usually in this channel,
Right.
And then everybody else plugs in. As you go across, you have as many as you need.
Right.
And you have EQ. So when we plug everybody in, generally we kind of set everything down to right around this main mark. And listen to everybody, and we do that sound check. And try and turn the tone on the guitar all the way up and the volume all the way up and the pickup to the brightest possible position. So just everything all the way cranked, and just have everybody hit the strings as loud as possible. That way you're getting the brightest, harshest sound possible from the guitar. And you can EQ each of the guitars and make them sound basically the same volume.
Okay.
And so you just do that with EQ. If it's too dull, turn up the highs. If it's too muddy, turn up some of the mids and turn down the basses as you need. Les Paul generally need a little bit less of everything,
Right.
Especially a lot less bass. And it should just sound nice, simple, easy. Because at that point, what's going on is you're going to have a sub and a master volume. These subs control what comes out of the sub output back here. And so right now I'm plugging number 1 in this sub, and the main volumes control what come out of the left output of the mains here. Okay, so when you're working with the group, what happens is right now we have everybody turned on in the sub. So each of these channels, when the button is pressed in,
Is activated.
it's going out through the sub. And so whatever this volume is, and just generally keep it, about, again, at that, at that main mark.
Right.
Set all the levels that way. And so all of those channels are going out. That's our, our rhythm group. Everybody's playing in that. That cable right here is the one that came out to this processor. And the way the processor is set up on all these, so you get a clean sound coming in here. You have the modeler set up, and in any sort of system, you have the modeler set up. Okay. That gives us the guitar sound. And I always crank the mids on the bosses, and a little more treble, not too much bass, not too much gain, keep the level about even. I always turn the reverb up to around 1920, something like that. Volume really should just be set even. We're not using the wah right now, but if you did, just press on that, it turns the wah on. This channel is meant as a boost, so I put the solo up, and when you press on it, you know, adjust it so that you hear a nice solid boost, like a real actual boost to get whoever's playing out of the mix. This one's set up as a distortion boost, so I have it set up on overdrive. Over here I have it set on natural. One of these not so distorted overdrives, so that we can just kind of boost the sound. You can actually use both of these together, but usually one or the other will give you just the right distortion sound. And there are the settings. Lots of level, but not too much drive on this one. And a little bit of volume, but not too much, you know, compression and attack. That's what that stuff is over there. This modulation effect is set up as our delay, and I turn that on anytime really we have a lead sound. So I get just like, you know, 2 taps maybe. The rate's set around 450 milliseconds usually, so we'll say 45 up here. And then, you know, the volume right around center here. So it's repeating, tapping at about 450 milliseconds, about half a second, something like that, twice, and then volume is pretty decent. You hear that fairly loudly, but it doesn't keep on tapping. So I want to keep that middle knob turned down. And this one's set up as a looper. We don't really need to use that. That's why I have this one set up as a delay, because I like to have a looper. When I'm playing, I'll use looper, but we won't use that for the show. And then the distortion, you know, you want to turn the distortion all the way up, and then adjust, you know, the volume and the treble. Don't have too much treble, or else it'll, you know, kind of sound harsh. And you just want to, you know, you want to get it also so it's not too dull. Usually somewhere around here is good, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and the level, you know, should sound basically the same, you know, just overdriven. Same volume, same kind of tone. You should be able to switch back between the clean and the distortion without really hearing a huge tonal difference, just some gain and sustain, and, you know, distortion a little broken up. And then when you really want to add some more, you'll use these to add like a lead sound. So I usually use these things. And then, you know, you can just still use this for a clean boost if we want a clean boost. So everybody's always playing through here. We'll keep the sound for the most part. So most of the time, this is clean. You know, clean. Or if we're doing like a blues or a rock, like Sunshine or Love or something, have a little bit of distortion, maybe a little bit of delay. But most of the time, this just stays nice and clean. That's what everybody's playing through. And then what you do is, remember, the main cables and the, you know, set up on these volumes, this stuff, the main, is going out through this cable, and that's the one that's going out to that second processor. So all you need to do to put a person in that main channel is pop the main button on. They're still in the sub channel. You could take them out, but it, you know, generally they're not going to be heard in that channel.
Now you have to hit for their channel, right? You just hit their button.
So if I'm plugged in here, when I pop myself up, I just press that on.
And then you're ready for a lead sound.
If you're here, I can take me off and plug and pop you in, and that routes you in through the main, and you're now going into that processor. And remember, each of these is plugged into a different input on the mixer. And, you know, you just adjust those as you need. This is, I usually keep this one as the lead sound, or backwards. This one is the rhythm sound. This one's the lead sound. You can adjust that as you need, you know, so, you know, generally these volumes should be basically all the same if you do the sound check well. Get everybody hitting their guitar as loud as possible with the highest treble response. And they should be basically mixed at that point. So everybody going into the sound system over here will, into the lead system will basically sound the same, but you can always adjust a little bit here while they're playing, you know, pull someone up if they're, you know, if a guitar has like a different kind of gain, different humbucker, they might, you know, not quite have the same volume as someone who has less gain. You know, that sort of thing is just sort of what we play with live, but that's just turning the slider up and down, the one that this mixer is plugged into. And, you know, as you go through, you kind of listen to everybody, get a good sound in the beginning.
Try to keep everybody at the same volume.
Yeah. And then, so this entire mixer, everybody's going through here all the time because we have the subs all turned on, and that's coming out and going through this channel. So you can turn that entire mix, the whole group, up or down. It's like one guitar, basically. You know, you're tuning the rhythm guitar up, and then you can turn the lead guitar up for whoever's in that. This is the bass you always want to have. So generally, you want the singer to be louder than everything. And the problem with this is that, you know, if you turn it up too high, it'll start to feed back. So when you're doing the mix, you got to kind of find that level where it really starts to squeak and, you know, and really get uncomfortable, and it'll just start feeding back uncontrollably.
And does that have a reverb channel?
Yeah, there is a little reverb. That's just a little knob here, and I like to keep. You want to keep a good amount of reverb on the vocals. It really makes a big difference, you know. It sounds like almost overwhelming here. You can change the, you know, the type of reverb you have here, you know, but we usually just use like number one or one of the first ones. Just number one is fine.
So basically, this is for setting the output, and this is for crafting the sound over here, basically.
This is for the whole band. So
that,
everybody's
that
playing.
controls the band.
Yeah, like if we were just playing with like one or two guitars, you know, one guitarist would plug into this, one guitarist would plug into that, and they'd all each control their own sound. You know, everybody would turn on the distortion.
Everybody going into there.
So. Well, so if we just had a guitar in each of those, everything would plug in here. You'd have your singers plugged in here. You'd have the, you know, the drum machine plugged in here, or that acoustic plugged in here, and then two guitars, electric guitars plugged in here, and a bass plugged in here, and you just mix them as you want. You want the bass to be really loud. Bass has got to be super solid. Really, you know, it's one of the things that will make it feel not that healthy. Drums has to be pretty significant too. Singer has to be louder, that, and then the guitars just kind of mix in with everything. You know, the bass and the drums are going to make the most, you know, the biggest difference in how full it sounds. And then you just want to hear the guitar. It shouldn't punch. It, you know, it should just kind of mix in with everything. You know, kind of set in that better sound. You got to have a lot of bass. You got to have a lot of vocals. A lot of vocals have to go everything. So set the vocals. And, you know, have everybody get really close to their mic. You know, remember that difference between like a half inch and a quarter inch and nothing is like tremendous. Like at a half inch, you hardly hear it. At, you know, right up there, it'll blow away. And, you know, we're working with all the singers to really project into the mic, so it gets loud. So yeah, this is just you're treating this like a single guitar. This is mixing all the guitars. This is sort of the guitar equalizer section. And, you know, it's kind of like on every amp, you have an equalizer. We're doing that to make sure everybody's the same. And then this just switches them in and out. Pressing those buttons switches them in and out of the lead channel. If the main is pressed, they're going into that. If the sub is pressed, they're going into that. And you can have both. You can have someone going in the sub. So usually when someone's taking a solo, I just punch the main, and then when the next one comes along, I'll punch that and take the other one off. Yep, and then punch the next one. And we usually set it up so everybody's plugging in. You know, I usually set it up around the room so it's kind of easy to see, because otherwise this gets crazy to manage. You know, first person here, and then as you go around the room clockwise, keep people that way. As you're going around, you can really see who everybody is. And I'll usually actually, if I know some people aren't playing, I'll kind of put them over here. And that way, if I know they're not doing solos, I'm never going to touch them.
They're outside the lineup.
Yeah, and you know, if someone doesn't know what they're doing, you know, we can kind of talk about like who's lead and stuff. But like, you know, if we're doing an acoustic song and Marty's going to be doing, you know, leading that acoustic tune, push him up and, you know, make sure he's loud. You could really crank him and turn this down just a little bit. So you don't really hear the rest of the guitars that much, and just have him loud on those songs. And that's true for everything. You know, if someone's really leading the group in any song or any like general kind of, just make them a little louder than everybody else. And if you know that they're like not doing well on a tune and they just don't know it and they're just kind of following, crank it back, crank that, you know, that slider back a little bit. And you'll notice that, you know, every once in a while you'll see like someone's like, I don't know if I know this, just take them down a little bit, you know. You got to really watch that. It's one of the biggest things, to make sure that we're all, you know, there's still a strong lead somewhere. You know, it has to be someone or two or three leading the tunes, you know. But, you know, for lead, this is totally separate. So you can make this as loud as you want, and everybody can really pop out of the mix. As soon as you pop that main, man, it goes over here. And however you have this sound set up. Oh, by the way, when you're playing, you might want to turn, if no one's doing leads, you might want to turn off the distortion or turn off the main lead, because that'll be humming the whole time. And if it's making a ton of noise, just turn that down if it's not needed or not doing solos. That'll make a big difference in how much noise there is. That's it. I think that's pretty much it. So the way the routing goes, the other things that happen here on our main mixer, there's two ways you can get sound to come out. You can get the XLR for the main mix out here, or there's another 1/4 inch out here. So one of these has a 1/4 inch going in. This one has a 1/4 inch going in,
and they're plugged in with the power off on the speakers, right?
Yeah. It's better always to plug them in.
Okay.
Yeah, without having any They don't want to hurt the speakers. Generally, if you can, when we're out, we'll always use XLRs to plug them in. They generally get less noise. But in here, one day I think we ran out of broken XLR cable and was plugged this in. It stayed that way ever since, just like a guitar cable going out here. And that'll do in a pinch. These are basically the same. Anything you get out from this left and right 1/4 inch, you'll get the exact same thing coming out of the left and right main mix down here. They're the same kind of thing. This sub isn't doing anything here. We're not doing a sub mix. We're not doing that would be used for like a monitor mix. You'd have, cables coming out of the sub outputs and back and go into a monitor, and you could turn the monitors up and down as you needed. And you could select what you wanted in the monitors by clicking sub.
Gotcha.
Cool. So you just turn the main mix up, and generally, in most situations, it's going to be like not much more than that.
Okay.
Cool. In here, this one always gets turned up a little more than they're backwards in here.
Right.
This one gets turned up a little bit more.
Kind of depends on the room and the set of those speakers.
Really. in this room, this one just needs to be
dominant.
turned up a little bit more.
Okay.
It's just the way it is in this room and the way these speakers are set up right now. But generally, you want to keep these mostly flat. I have this one. This speaker basically is our bass speaker. It's a nice big fat 15-inch speaker. Right. And so I usually use this to get a little more bass response. So I turn up the lows there. But you don't really need that, most cases. So again, the whole thing, everybody plugs into here, adjust the bass and the vocals especially, get them louder and everything. If you're playing with a live drum kit, right. Like in our case with Matthew, you want to kind of get the vocals set with the drums. Make sure that however loud Matthew's going to play, your drummer's going to play, you can get those vocals louder. And if you can't get those to stop feeding back, you gotta tell the drummer to play a little quieter.
Okay.
Also, in here, we have our speakers facing the walls, because if they were facing this way, they'd be pointing directly into the microphone, and you get a ton of feedback. Normally, the way this works is these speakers are going to be facing out to the audience.
Right.
And the whole band should be behind them. So
right.
In a club, we'll do that. And then what we'll do is maybe set up some small monitor speakers on the ground facing back right by where the microphone stands are. Yeah, so everybody can hear themselves, because that's how all the sound is coming out in this. We have model guitars, there's no guitar amps. It actually makes it really easy to adjust the levels, because you're hearing what the audience is hearing. They're just going to hear a different level. Just if we're playing with acoustic drums, you got to be really careful. Go out in the audience and make sure that the drums can be heard as loud as the mix in the band.
Okay.
Cool.
Right.
And just make sure the guitars don't get too loud. That's what one of the things that always happens. Leave the real loud parts to the lead sound. And make sure the singer can be heard. If they're pushing in the mic as loud as they can get, that should be, the most obvious audible thing. Drums and bass mix together about that, and then the guitars just mix them in. Okay, and when we do acoustic, so now you have everybody coming out of here, right. Going either into here or into here. So if we want everybody to play acoustic, just take that cable, plug it into the Zoom. And we got a program in here. The main program that comes up, and there's I think there's 3 copies of it in different patches. Just plug in and have that program written out. So if we have to use someone else's G1, and just plug into here, and that'll give us an acoustic sound.
All right.
So now all of a sudden, everybody's sounding like an acoustic guitar, because we have that one cable that was plugged into here, plugged into here, and then that's going to be on the slider where the drum machine was.
Okay.
Well, and I usually mix the drum machine volume and the acoustic volume so it's appropriate,
Okay. So you blend them together on the one channel then?
Yeah, it's all coming out of here. If we're playing live, when you guys play out, if you play live with a drummer, you just never have to worry about that. Just, set the acoustic volume with the slider and you're done. Right. Usually here I have it set so that, when the drums are going, we can play acoustic guitar and it's about the right volume. Cool? Right. Okay, I think that does it. For the other cable routing, you need to have power plugged into the speakers. So you get, these they look like computer cables. Mm-hmm. And then the cable that came out of the back of the main mixer, the band mixer, right. goes into here. So that's out of the main coming out of the band mixer goes into here. And then another one, same thing over here, gets plugged here, and there's another cable for that. These both go on stands. Okay. So you got this little triangle, and they're all upstairs with the gear. You need to make sure that there goes again. You need to make sure that this, that we got something to hold this up. When you put these in, don't just tighten them and expect them to stay. They'll flop right down. Yeah. And then, we want to make sure you guys pack a pile of, the stands are in the green bag. Right. There's more music stands in there. Mic stands are up in bags. We don't want to take anything out of this room because this just stays the same all the time. Try not to use anything. We have everything we need, stands, everything. Except if you want a couple of these, big ones, grab a couple of those. If you, maybe a singer wants one of those. Basses, all the instruments are up there. I want to make sure there are tuners, so just leave everything here. Bass player will have his own bass. Everybody will have their own guitar. Maybe bring a guitar, or two, just extra. You might want to bring a bass just in case he has a broken string or something. Yeah. And we have one up in the room up there that's always bagged, and some guitars that are always bagged. Cool. And there's power in all of those in the bags. There's plenty of power. There's extension cables. You're going to need, we have this huge box of cables here. Those have to be the longest. Those are 1/4-inch cables that everybody plugs into, and those go into the mixer. Probably should bring this for show, just in case, in case anybody forgets. We've got more up there, but these, I want to keep these separate because these are cheapy cables. Right. And I use only Monster cables or the Guitar Center brand. I can't think of what they're called. Livewire. Yeah, Livewire brand. And so everybody will have cables to plug in. Okay. And then that bag has its own mixer. You do have to bring this mixer. We don't have another big mixer. We have another small mixer that could handle maybe, it's however many of this is. It could handle like 8 guitars, something like that. But bring this one in. That's what this is for. Okay, that's the only thing out of this room that you want to bring. There are extra power cables in there, but just grab the power cable and grab that mixer because that's the only dedicated mixer. There's another huge mixer upstairs you could use, but just this one is good.
Now people can bring any of their own equipment with them, right? They can bring their own cables and all.
Yeah. Cables should be all you need. Tuners. Right. Tuners are a big thing. All right. So when you plug it in, power goes into here, power goes into here, power goes into here, and power goes into here. And so you have to adjust the power strips on stage to be everywhere. Now you also have, for these things, you notice we have the power is plugged into one hotspot. That comes out, and there are all of these connectors that go across. So I have the main power is coming to here. And that's going out to all these connectors. And you can see that just kind of daisy chains along and connects every one of these things.
That doesn't cause any noise?
No, it's better. There's not as much. There aren't as many things. And there's also one going in here. And so you plug in all of those things with this one hotspot. And there are a couple of those in the bags upstairs, the backups and everything. So, and you want to have, there are these little cables in there. Those plug in coming out. So you just don't have a ton of cables here. There's going to be a cable going from here up to the mixer, like I talked about, and then cables going into each one of the mixers. Stands, music stands. The mics have mic stands, and those have mic cables that go out. When you do this, generally it's best to set the mic on the bottom because you put them on top, and they always inevitably kind of fall over during the show, and then singers are trying to find them. You kind of want to position them so that they can sort of get to the left. So they can just kind of go up and see their music like that as they're in the mic. And you don't want to have them angling out too far, else again they kind of sink. Right. Have them mostly going straight up so you can see kind of where they need to be positioned. And again, those cables go straight out into here. You can just adjust it and get the EQ set with little high mids, not too much highs. Let's see what else is in the mix. That's pretty much it. Power cables are going to run from both sides of the stage. Usually, you put, you need to get everything to the front of the stage. So I usually have, one of the speakers not too far away from this main mess, and I'll have one more extension going over to one speaker, and then the other side just goes to one speaker usually. Maybe a monitor over there. If you need to have monitors, those also need to have power cables going in. Sometimes we'll put a speaker kind of beside us or like next to the drummer, or if there's if Kieran's singing in a show, we'll have a monitor right next to him. Okay. And we just kind of all hear that on stage. And it's, if you're putting those speakers out front of house, it's loud enough. It doesn't really feel, I mean, you can hear it, but you can put a monitor kind of behind you if it's not going to bleed directly into the mics. Right. Or just kind of in front of you, if you have a room in front of you, you can kind of let everybody hear that one monitor. Yeah. Over on the side is enough to get people hearing on stage, just so that you can hear it. And there's a bunch of those little speakers. Let me show you the speakers. So we have out in the main room, there's another one of these. And here too, there's another one of these. If you guys really want a big bass speaker, actually don't take this one. Take this one, because this one is all ready to go. Set up, just put the computer down. We don't really use that computer. Okay. You can just grab that. When we come back, we'll look at it. And up here is where all the equipment is. So we're not bringing any guitar amps. You know, everything is
right all through this. It's all amp.
Yep, it's all in this room. So you got to be really careful with these. These are my most prized speakers. They're like $800 a piece.
I've used these before.
They're awesome and they're easy to carry. These are Mackeys. Those are little 8 inches, but they're 2,000 watts. Wow. And then we've got a QSC, and there's another one that's kind of like that same size, but that's usually more than enough. That's $3,000 worth of amps there, $2,500 worth of amps, you know. Just be careful with them. The bags here are really my solo bags. You see we got some instruments, my solo instruments. Here's all the stands, mic stands. Yeah, I remember. There's a music stand and some, what do you call PA stands. We want to use, where'd it go? Oh yeah, they're in here. We just adjusted this. These 2 bags right here have everything. Okay. Everything you need, the mixers, power, everything. Right. So you should never have to unload anything except in those 2 bags. All the cables, the good cables.
So there's mixers in there already?
Yeah, there's a couple mixers. Just use the top one.
So do we need
microphones.
To use anything from downstairs?
No, you don't need to use anything. Don't use anything
so
downstairs.
You don't have to touch anything. Okay,
yeah,
good.
And obviously there's a kit here. Don't use this one. If we ever wanted to play electronic, use the one that's right down below here. The other one is really good. And there's another mixer here. Keyboard stands. If we ever have keyboards you can grab. There's a ukulele in here. Yeah, there's ukulele. If we ever needed that. We're not doing any of that stuff now. But those 2 big black bags are where everything is. And just in case, you know, talk with me first, but you can bring these bags just in case there's anything needed. And we don't want to go into them unless we have to. This one is my main bag, the one that's closed. The one that's ripped open, that one has all the same stuff. It's the exact duplicate of this, well, basically a duplicate. And you can get everything you need in there, too, for an entire show. It's a really super compact setup. But I'd rather not touch these and get them mixed up. If we take anything out of there, make sure it goes back in there, because those are the ones that I gig with all the time, okay? All right. The stuff in the other room is for... yeah, it's for Rockfactory shows. This is my stuff. Okay. But you can bring it. Just try not to open those bags if you don't have to. Everything is in those 2 black bags. Just got to move the drums out of the way here. Yeah, no problem. There's a bass. Let's see. The bass, the blue bass, I think maybe it's in the other room, is the one we usually take out. If you can't find it, you can always grab the one there. But blue or red, either one. Okay. Let's see what he's got here. He's got the blue bass in here, so the red bass, I guess, is the one we've been taking out. Okay. A lot of these Fenders don't work anymore, so just make sure you get one of the, if you're going to take a bass as a backup, get one of the Yamahas. All right. Okay, I think that's everything. Okay. Cool.